Hello and welcome to The Situation Room. I'm James Cary and I'm all about helping you write better sitcom scripts, but I'm also about helping you make your own stuff, particularly at the moment. I think a lot of people are wanting to work out how they can make their own stuff, prove their talent, prove their writing, and just generally put stuff in front of people. And who better to talk to about this than my former co-host of the Sitcom Geeks podcast, 222 episodes that we did together. Would you please welcome Dave Cohen? Hello, Dave.
Hi, James. Lovely to be chatting to you again for the 223rd time, in fact.
Indeed. Yes. Right. Yeah. I'm sure we've had some unrecorded conversations, but not as many as we've had recorded conversations, I don't think.
That's true. Yeah.
So let me just fill in the audience who may not be familiar with our previous podcast called Sitcom Geeks. All 222 episodes are up if you want to go back and have a listen to those. But Dave has made a living in the comedy industry for many, many years, writing jokes for Have I Got News for You, writing songs for Horrible Histories, writing scripts and all kinds of things, including for Not Going Out and working for them and lots of things. But so we'll talk about sitcoms first, because also you've got a newsletter and you have done some online tutoring and courses and coaching of that. You still keep reading sitcoms that people keep writing, because we love sitcoms and we know they're not going away. But what are you reading when people are sending you sitcoms? What are people writing about, and what really annoying basic errors are they making?
Yeah, I am still reading. I do get a lot of scripts. They generally the standard, I would say, has got a lot better, and people there's just so much more advice out there, I guess. So people,
well, that's partly our fault, isn't it? Annoyingly.
Yeah. It looks like a script. It's the right length. Something happens at the right time, and then there's the consequence of that, and then other things happen, and then they generally sort of fizzle out at the end, which is, I think, it's just
sometimes
true.
they don't fizzle in, if we're honest.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah. But I'd say, if you're thinking of what are the things, the number one thing, and I find this when I'm watching programs that have been made by very well-known people or whatever, or and I've got money from Netflix or the BBC, and I still get a feeling that I get about three-quarters of the way through and it just, it's all gone wrong. Or you get to the end and it's all gone wrong, and it's like, oh, okay, the punch they've made the ending the worst possible thing that can happen. Whereas I want to see them come back. I want to see my main character not learning from their mistakes, but somehow managing to get back to the same place where they were at the start. And that's the number one thing, really, is the characters. They don't go on enough of a journey, I would say, in each episode.
Yeah, it's all about what the plot is about and what it's really about as well, isn't it? And I wrote a blog post a little while back about why a character wants to pass their driving test. And so, and do they pass and do they fail? Well, by the time you get to the pass fail moment, it should almost be irrelevant whether they pass or fail, because they've now realized why they wanted to pass it so badly. And it wasn't just because so that they got to drive a car. It was to get away from their mother, or to put whatever on their sister or something like that. And once that emotional plot has been resolved in some way, then it sort of doesn't really matter how it ends. But this stuff is not obvious, and good sitcoms do this stuff all the time, and you don't notice that they're doing it. So when you start doing it for yourself, it is much harder, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, and I come back a lot to the thing you always used to say, really, about characters, which is that we tend to be a bit soft on our characters, partly because sometimes or often they are a version of us, and we don't quite know how much bad stuff to put them into. But I mean, I say I get a lot of scripts and people say, oh, we've got to the all is lost moment. Oh, he didn't get the job or whatever. I say, no, it's got to be more than that. It's like, if he didn't get, not only did he not get the job, but as a result of that, he's going to go to jail or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to up the stakes, and you
Yeah.
can do it
Mm.
because you remember this is fiction. You're making it up.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And it's not an average day in the life of this person.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
6 incidents through the course of a year.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't it doesn't have to be you go to jail, but it's if the character has whatever the emotional issues are and the faults are and that the character has. It's like you say that thing about he wants to get away from his mother. That sounds like, oh yeah, well, that might be a thing, but I mean it might be really who what if his mother is like Bates Motel, the
Yeah.
mother,
Yeah. That's right.
whatever, she's the worst because it's sitcom and we can exaggerate. She is the worst mother in the world, and so getting away from mother isn't just, oh, I got to get away from mother. It's like, I have got to get
Yeah.
away from her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you've really, so it
Yeah. And also,
that's
it's not, and in that script, we need to see an evidence of what it is that she does that makes his desperation to get away from her completely reasonable. She's controlling something in a particular way, and so we're thinking, yeah, he does need to get away, but there'll be that emotional tear of the fact that, yeah, but she's still my mother, and the
yeah.
amount of stuff that people put up with from members of their own family. Say two blokes above their 45th birthday. It's like, yeah, no, it's incredible, isn't it? But yeah, no. So
Yeah.
that's a common one, isn't it? It's just the plotting we found for the last 100 episodes of our podcast, wasn't it? That
Mm.
although there were, I think scripts did improve in the time that we were doing it, that the plot is just a lot harder to do than you think it is, and having characters and having jokes and having funny scenes is still not enough.
Yeah.
You really do need to think very carefully about how it escalates and what's at stake and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think one thing I still see a lot of, still very common, and I think and we do all suffer from it as well, is that when I see an outline, for instance, from a writer, and they've got to this sort of place where things are getting really bad for the main character, and then they get a bit stuck, and it's like, oh well, if I'm gonna take it in this direction, or I'm gonna bring in this new thing,
Yeah.
and that is, and it is really, really hard. That's why that's why it is hard to write a sitcom. Is you can't go somewhere else. This is sitcom land. You're stuck there. You have the character has to find the answer, even if the answer is I'm going to do something and I'm not going to learn anything from it. I mean, I do think Modern Family is just the sort of best, the best homework anyone can do is just watch an episode of Modern Family, and there's like 4 or 5 plots start in the first 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
They all sort of get to an all is lost moment. I mean, some of them shorter than others, but and it's the same thing each time. It's like Phil, the mask slips, and Phil, we see this horrible side of Phil, and it's okay, he's not going to jail or anything like that, but it's like, this is the father of 3 kids who's trying desperately to be something he can never be. And he gets to this point where he realizes he's failed, and you see this guy, and you think about the emotional effect. We remember that from our childhoods of when the parent got cross with us, and it's the worst thing in the world. And that's just, they do that, and then you've got there's always a Cameron and Mitchell thing where Cameron just wants everything shouted out through megaphone and banners and bunting and everything that he does. Going to the shops is like a kind of, and whereas Mitchell is very sort of shy and tight bottomed.
No, it is really carefully woven together, and there are a lot of characters, but the number of outside characters they have in it is really, really low, and it's because they don't need them. Well, but it would still be tempting to have other characters in it to resolve your plots, but they always manage to find it. Actually, the other show to watch, because I think it really does it well and even better than I remember, is Arrested Development. I've just gone back to series 1, and I'm watching it with my oldest, and just going, oh my goodness, this is so brilliantly plotted. But it's not just that. I've always remembered it as being jump out of the seat, brilliant plotting, which is quite rare, that when the plotting itself is absolutely amazing and the callbacks and everything. But the characters are so big and driven and flawed. But actually, it would be really easy for Jason Bateman's character, Michael, at the center, to be the boring everyman. And he's not. He's the worst too, actually. And they've been very good at putting him through the mill because he's actually quite controlling. And his family bring out the worst in him, and he takes the bait as well. And so I think that's a good bit of homework as well. And then of course Frasier would be another one, just to see if you want to see how to plot a sitcom beautifully and simply, just watch Frasier and just plot scenes, and it's just absolutely smooth as butter left out overnight, isn't it? Oh my goodness, Frasier's so perfect.
I'm glad you mentioned it, James, and not me. So,
yes, right. No, and he didn't even mention Steptoe. So at that point,
gosh, yeah. But I mean, I think that's a good point also that you brought up there, is that sort of exaggeration thing. And again, that's another thing. Sometimes I'll see a very good script and things happen, and I just think, now, can you make this more like a cartoon? I think, can you just like really sort of exaggerate these characters a bit more? And you can do that, and you can get away with that in a 27 minute episode, because you know, they're only on screen for, you know, even like a main, like character number 3 is only on screen, say, for 5 minutes, and you can actually really push a character. And you know, the more exaggeration you can have, then the funnier the script will be.
Or even it's sometimes that you don't even need to exaggerate, you just need to take out the boring bits. It's just so it may be that a character's sort of peaks and troughs of very high and low, just kind of almost remove the low, so that they are always heightened at this level. I think sometimes maybe that might be the way to go. It's just you just sort of want to turn the whole thing up,
or to 11.
Turn it up to 11, or you just sort of make the gain higher. I don't know. Take out the background noise. I'm running out of metaphors here, but we should get off this before we do some damage. So we've talked about big common problems and mistakes, even mistakes in sitcom scripts, and you know, the industry's pretty hard at the moment in terms of getting stuff away. I think although there's been a lot of big talk from, you know, channels about, we want comedy, we want big bold comedy, and I listened to the Rest Is Entertainment podcast with Richard Osman and Marina Hyde, who are both big comedy fans and comedians in their own right, as it were. And they've sort of said, oh, they want half-hour hard comedy. And when it comes down to it, I'm still not sure that they want to pull the trigger on something without some very serious reassurances that I saw something had been commissioned recently with Dawn French in it, and Mark Heap, and written by Simon Mayhew Archer, and who'd done this country and stuff. So it felt like that was a really, in one sense, safe bet. That's not to be denigrating at all about that, but they'd assembled a really compelling offer. But the idea in itself is actually quite a hard sell, I think, generally. So you kind of need to assemble a lot to get it over the line, I think. But then again, I was talking to my writing partner the other day, and just thinking, maybe this was always the case, and we just managed to think of an idea in Bluestone 4-2, which was a sitcom set in an active war situation. So, you know, we thought of a really hot idea, so hot it could literally take both of your legs off if you touched it. So I don't know. And part of me is now just thinking that I've been remembering my career incorrectly, and just thinking, no, it was always really hard. And just because you're more experienced, it doesn't mean that you get to shortcut any of the process.
Yeah, it always was really hard, but the difference was that more stuff got made and more stuff failed. Stuff was allowed to fail. I mean, that's the first time I've heard of this Dawn French Mark Heap, but you can guarantee there'll be so much stuff riding on it, and it'll be, you know, the pressure on the show to be brilliant from the opening minute. It's almost too great, really. Whereas if there were 3 sitcoms happening I mean, just before we started doing this, you were talking about possibly the day that that you came back from hospital from being born, and there was like a classic episode of Porridge on BBC One, and then a classic episode of Fawlty Towers on BBC Two on the
Yeah,
same night.
yeah,
You know,
both
for
first
the
transmitted for the first time.
first time. You know,
Yeah,
and to get to that place, there were probably that those there will have been. I know there will have been. Clement and Lafrene, for instance, will have written 3 or 4 things that either didn't get made or maybe got one series and that was it. So that's the difference, is that people are just not making sitcoms now.
yeah,
And
yeah. It's
that's
interesting. I listened. You and I both listened to Cal Newport's podcast, I think, don't we?
oh yes,
What's it
big
called?
fan.
Slow Productivity? I can't remember.
Yeah, slow
Um,
productivity. Yeah,
is it?
thanks.
Well,
Or
that's his name.
deep work, I think it's
Deep
called.
Work or something. He's got lots of books and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he never tires of telling a story, which I think is very helpful, about the arts professor or whoever who got his students to make pots, and he got half of the class to make one perfect pot and the other half to make as many pots as they could manage.
Mm.
And at the end of it, the people who made the perfect pot were the people who made as many as they could manage, because out of all of the ones they produced, one of them was absolutely, platonic
Yeah.
ideal pot. Whereas the ones who fussed over that one produced something that was pretty good, but it wasn't as good as the, as just generating lots and lots of things. And that's really interesting. And it's now, as you say, a lot will be riding on new shows, because it's, if we can get this one away, but if this one doesn't work, then maybe sitcom's finished. It's like,
Well, remember when we chatted to Daniel Peake about the show he did, Big Top, which
yeah,
was like it was one of the first audience sitcoms in a long time,
yeah,
and so as per there was a lot riding on it. Amanda Holden was in it, and I never actually saw it, and I mean, I can't believe it was as bad as everybody made out. But I think once somebody says, "Oh, this is so bad," you've got to see
yeah,
how bad it is. That's you're stuck with that. And poor Daniel, he said he was like, it's like being a war criminal, or
yeah,
for
yeah,
and he came back and has done loads and loads of brilliant stuff. So well done to him. But he was probably quite young at that point. I mean, that could sort of destroy your
yeah,
confidence completely, really.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
you need, and I've been kind of researching just a lot of sitcom, just coming up with a lot of stuff. And in fact, I met a guy called Brad Ashton the other day, and I'm just writing up a big interview with him. He's 94 years old now, but he used to work. There was a sort of communal group of comedy writers, and they had this I'd always thought, because it's called something like Associated Entertainment, I had this image of this place, this kind of big office block. But it turns out it was just a like two or three rooms above a grocer's shop in Shepherd's Bush, and it
Yeah,
was Eric
yeah,
Sykes,
yeah.
Frankie Howard, Galton and Simpson, and
John Antrobus, I seem to remember, was one of
yeah,
them.
yeah, John Antrobus. Well, there was a whole gang of people
Yeah,
who came in. And Bob Monkhouse was there, and Brad mostly wrote for Bob Monkhouse. But there's this sort of collective of comedy writers, and they're all going out and doing all this sort of different stuff. And there's like they're making 2 or 3 sitcoms a year. At least two of which aren't getting past a pilot or
yeah,
whatever. Maybe one gets a series, and every 2 or 3 years, one of them
yeah.
has a hit. But so it is
As you said, a collective of comedy writers. I was thinking, wow, we really need a collective noun for comedy writers.
a
I don't know
moan.
a moan, an envy. I don't know.
Yeah.
A dissolution. I don't know. It just feels
Uh,
like there's an awful lot of tension.
a dole queue, I think, at the moment. Sadly,
Is the dole even still a thing? I didn't know if that had
maybe not. Yeah,
survived.
yeah.
The sitcom seekers allowance, I think, should be brought back in. Well, I tell you what, one big sitcom wouldn't half cheer everybody up. There was an
absolutely.
old Andy Zaltzman used to do a joke round about 2013, 2014. He used to say, when it's not going very well for the government, they've decided to call a snap Olympics. Because everybody just felt so great in 2012 because of the Olympics. Let's just have another one, and it'll just affect the mood of the nation. So I always love that as a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so that's situation comedy, and I'm still in that game. I've got a sitcom out at the moment, which I've co-written a script, a full script on spec, which I think is a decent mainstream thing that I really, really want to do. So I'm still in the game, but also I've always been making my own stuff, as have you. So why don't you say a little bit about why on earth you would go from, writing jokes for Have I Got News for You and horrible history songs and stuff to writing novels? What a terrible, I mean, what kind of conversation did you have with your wife about that?
Yeah, I mean,
Then you'll be doing overtime, love.
yeah, I didn't actually.
Okay. If you don't want to know the answer, don't ask the
No,
question.
exactly. Well, in fact, she would say things occasionally, and there was just in their kind of curiosity of like they would be so sort of devastating, but it's kind of it's something I've gone back to, I would say, rather than that I've arrived at. I mean, novels. I always wanted to be a novelist, and that goes a long way back. Actually, I mean, I really wanted to be a comedy writer. I wanted to write radio comedy because Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was I'm so old, it was a radio show before it was a novel. But that, and then that becoming novel, so I very quickly went from wanting to write radio comedy and still do, that was a number one. But then novels was pretty soon after that. And I've got that, the novel urge has stayed strong. But in my sort of around that time, and in my sort of late 70s, early 80s, I was kind of doing that. DIY was just what everybody did. I was in the music biz, and I was doing, this was really before alternative comedy. I was playing folk clubs and working men's clubs, singing silly songs, and I got involved in Bristol with setting up a punk record label, and that's really was the sort of the thing that that do it yourself thing. It's very, very exciting. B, you have complete control over what you're making. So that's about it for pros. Now we go to C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K.
The other pro is you. Therefore, you get all the money. One of the cons is there isn't any money.
What money? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the cons are that you just it's basically a hobby that you may get lucky with. I think is probably the best way to describe it. And I think that was sort of how I felt. I mean, I wrote the first novel when I was about 60, 61 or whatever. So I kind of had reached the point of thinking, I'm not in this for the long game because
Right.
how long have I got really? But I want to write a novel. I want to see if I can write a novel. And actually, it's been a fantastic experience for me in terms of just the discipline of the writing of it has been brilliant, but also just you just find out so much about yourself as a person, and the kind of levels of self-awareness that have risen as a result of having to write a novel and two novels. In fact, I'm starting the third one this week, so I'm still at it. But yeah, it is nonsensical. I mean, especially when I know what you're talking about when you say about make your own stuff. It's like get some 2-minute sketches out on YouTube, which is a kind of it's a very obviously a very, very different discipline, but there is that thing being in control of what you make. And just going back to what you were saying there about the pots, is that you're not the first 10 sketches that you make aren't maybe not going to be any good, but along the way each time you'll learn a new thing. And in fact, I've just published the seventh book of my self-publishing career.
Right.
And I'm just better at self-publishing now than I was 6 books ago. I mean, I'm not brilliant at it. I'm not going to become the next Penguin, whatever, Simon and Schuster, whatever. But I kind of know what to do now,
Yeah.
and I've got better at it. And the book looks nice, and I've done podcast interviews about it, and I'm kind of out there
Yeah.
talking about it. I know, and I haven't just got it out there and thought, okay, that's it now. I can go on to the next project. I'm still out there pushing it, so I kind of know what I'm doing a bit more, and that's been a brilliant thing as well. And that's why I suggest it's a really good idea to just sort of go out there and try and make some short sketches.
Yeah. Yeah, and just in whatever medium suits you as well, because they don't have to
Mm.
be high quality filmed sketches. They can be audio. They can be written. They can be your sketch could even be a fake blog in the voice of somebody. If you've got an experience. I remember years ago coming across somebody who was running a bed and breakfast, and she'd written some kind of memoir about it, and I don't know how she got a hold of me, but I recommended it to my agent, and I don't know if she got a book deal or anything out of it. But I remember thinking what a brilliant perspective it was about the awful people that stayed in her bed and breakfast and the ludicrous demands that they would have. And so you could fictionalize that and just turn it up to 11 and make that really, really funny.
Mhm.
And
Well,
that could be,
yeah,
that could be like a monthly, weekly column or a Substack or something like that.
yeah.
It doesn't really, you don't have to film anything, but then again, the camera in your pocket is better than any camera that was on Earth in the 1990s.
Yeah.
So the possibilities are endless. But
Mm.
you just got to figure out. I mean, it's not as if writing a novel is not complicated beyond the idea of writing 60, 80,000 words. The process of getting it from your hard drive onto people's devices in a format that they can read or will even want to read is complicated, isn't it? I mean, it's a long process.
It is complicated, and this is something that I kind of deal with quite a lot in the book, which is about how to make your fiction funny. And it's that I've come from the world that you're still in,
Mm,
where 99.99% of what you write will not see the light of day. It just gets rejected. And then you come to this world where potentially 100% of what you write can go out there.
yeah,
It is easy. It is easy. It's not financially easy,
yeah,
but it is. Anyone can bring a book out. You can actually write a book, put it on Amazon, do your own cover, and not spend a penny. I mean, it will
and
be
no one
terrible.
will stop you,
Yeah,
including you. There's
yeah.
so, and that is both a wonderful bonus, but also an awesome prospect in every sense of the word.
Yeah. In fact, I would recommend, and I wish I'd done this myself, but I would say to you, if if you want to write a novel, write one,
Mm,
write it, write it, design the cover, put it out on Amazon, and then take it off, right? Ignore it, but just go through the process of what is required to write and publish a novel. And I guarantee you that when you then come to write the next novel, you will be loads better at it, and you'll know more about the process of what you have to do. So that's something that
yeah.
you can do, and it will cost you nothing. But obviously, as you say, it's the many hours spent, that are not you're not earning money doing a job.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
hard bit.
yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But also, we just still want to believe the romantic myth that we may just strike it lucky first time.
Mm,
And yet we
not
know
true.
that nothing else is going to work like that. You know that you can't look, you can't open the batting for England because the people who are bowling at you are bowling at 88, 90, 95 miles an hour. You will literally not see the ball. So,
Mm,
but if you want to compete with James Patterson or J.K. Rowling or whatever, you are in with the big boys, and it's a one in a million. In fact, it's even less than that, isn't it? I mean, this is the
mm,
thing that our friend Thomas Umstad Jr. says on his novel marketing podcast about is it the Pareto principle, about how it's not even the 80-20 about 80% of the money is made by 20% of the novelists. No. 96% of the money is made from about 3%.
Three people.
Yeah, yes, that's
Yeah,
right. I mean, we could
yeah,
list them now. We could list 20 people who between them
yeah.
would probably account for um, 85% of all fiction sales.
Well, I can list three now: J.K. Rowling, Colleen Hoover, Stephen King. That's
Yeah,
probably at
yeah, that's
least
covered. That's
60 or 70%
yeah,
of
absolutely. Yeah,
all book sale, all
yes,
fiction
right.
sales.
Yeah, Tom
Yeah,
Clancy, John Grisham,
yeah,
James Patterson. That's going to hoover up another 15 to
yeah.
20%. Um, and so yeah, but we just sort of think, but why not me? And you think,
Mm.
well, do you want me to tell you? It's so unlike. But even I think that as a writer, I think I've written one novel many years ago, which was okay, and it felt of the moment, but I can't bring myself to go back to it and look at it. And I have occasionally thought, oh, I should
Mm.
go back, fix it, and re-release it. And I just I don't want to do that. But we sort of know that there's so much to learn, and we say, oh, it's rubbish, don't read it, secretly hoping that it's wonderful and brilliant, that there won't be any notes. But we've just got to get out of that mindset, haven't we?
Yeah, and here's the thing that I've learned, the really big thing, and this is a new thing, and it sounds stupid when I say it, but
Perish the thought, Dave.
yeah,
Perish the thought.
right. Self-publishing means that you publish the book yourself. Now, as I say, that's
Yeah,
it doesn't take a lot, but actually, what that means in effect is that I am not just a writer, and I'm not just an editor, and I'm not just a marketer or whatever. I'm a publisher.
yeah,
That is my job, and the realization of this. I'm not. I mean, not that I hadn't realized it before, but the understanding of what I have to do,
yeah,
and so I've got plans now. I mean, I've got these sort of plans for books that I want to do, but I am. It's a difficult thing to do, obviously, when one is one person. But I am responsible for publishing Dave Cohen's books, and I'm going to protect Dave Cohen and the writer as much as I can, and protect his time and space for him to do his writing. But I'm going out there, and my job is to make sure his books sell enough copies
yeah,
that I can then get him, that I can keep him writing books. And this is the mentality that I think, and this is what I've missed all the years, in my punk days or whatever, where it was very much that thing of, yeah, oh, maybe this will be it. And it was happening all over the place. You knew people who were, today this is the bloke that, you caught the bus with and to town, and tomorrow he's on Top of the Pops, and next
yeah,
week he's on tour, and next week he's got a hit single, and it really did happen like that. And so there was much more of that chance of thinking of, yeah, this really is a possibility here. I'd say it's not a possibility now, but I think it is really worth thinking about making short sketches, but also just thinking of it as a business plan.
mm,
Make a business plan, and that's something I never did for 60 odd years. And because I was always like, hey, I'm a creative, I don't do that kind of thing. But actually, I think everything you've been saying about the world of sitcom and how hard it is to get stuff made, and it is really hard, and there are problems to how do we make it, and I think the key has got to be that you are an entrepreneur. I mean,
yeah,
I used to laugh
yeah,
about being called a writerpreneur and on the
yeah,
Sitcom Geeks podcast and cringe while saying it, but actually you are an entrepreneur. That's the job. That is your job. Your job is to make a living at what you love doing, which is writing. And I think that's something that's definitely changed for me in the last sort of few months, really.
yeah. And I think that's why I've been finding it so. Well, this is very cathartic. I've been finding it incredibly difficult as a sitcom writer, because being very experienced as a sitcom writer and quite good at it, and also knowing how to teach others to do it, but being consistently prevented from doing my job and the thing that I'm good at in a way that I have no control over. I cannot make the BBC commission my sitcom. I can't. I don't have the power to do that. And even if I really wrote an amazing script and assembled this incredibly good team, I can improve my chances and maybe get them from 5% to 15%. But I'm still more likely to come away with literally nothing. And no one see, and 5 people have read the script or 10 people have read the script. And it's going back to what you were saying about that 100%, 5%, an awful lot of stuff isn't produced. In the case of a script that isn't commissioned, 0% of it makes it to the audience. They don't go, oh, well, maybe we'll broadcast 10% of it and see if people like it. No, it's not that at all. They either spend 2 million quid making a series or they don't. They just spend no money at all on it.
Well, let's talk about this now, because this was a podcast that I listened to yesterday, and my emotions. I mean, I almost at one point turned it off. I was so angry at the idea of it. But basically, this guy runs his own TV company that's completely self-financing, and it's like it's putting stuff out on TikTok, and the thing that everybody says is the best way to succeed these days, social media, blah blah blah, whatever, is comedy. People love watching comedy, and then they always say the next word, which is unscripted comedy. You can't afford. The thing about unscripted comedy, it's great because you don't have to pay actors and you don't have to pay writers. Yeah. And I'm sitting there kind of throwing my phone across the room in anger. But actually, this guy who's done it, he worked in Hollywood for years and years. He says he's from Hollywood, and it breaks his heart to see that the whole Hollywood system is just collapsing, and people just don't go to the movies as much, and they don't rent out movies as much. They're watching, and nobody sits down in front of the telly. Everybody's watching stuff on phones, and so we have to find a way of making scripted comedy a thing. And I think we can do it, because they all say, oh, unscripted comedy, it's this, and and we got 400 million views on TikTok for this and that and blah blah blah. And I sort of think, yeah, you do, but what about if somebody made scripted comedy that's 2 minutes long, and there isn't enough of that. But the way he was talking about all the shows that he made, it's exactly what we were talking about earlier about they used to make more stuff. And how do they have success? They just make loads of stuff. One thing they did a series of 8 episodes of something before they knocked it on the head. And they tried everything. And there's one thing that they've got that is like a huge success. And it's like this girl, it's like a teenage thing, this sort of funny performer. She goes into boys' bedrooms and sorts them, because there's like look at this mess in these rooms. And it's a nice, funny idea. The first 2 episodes, they didn't get hardly anybody watched them. And they realized that because they had the music at the start, which like 2 seconds long, was just the wrong music. So they started cold with the thing, and then that's the thing took off. And that's the sort of thing we can be doing that. And it's frustrating to think, why aren't we doing that? Can we try and find a way to do that, except with scripts and with actors?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah,
that's too much to ask.
Yeah, well, free tools with YouTube, they tell you exactly when people stop watching.
Yeah.
It's the awful truth, isn't it? I mean, I suspect a lot of TV commissioners would love to have those kinds of analytics, but they sort of don't really get them. I guess streamers do, and obviously they don't tell anybody when everybody.
But what business models? Yeah, I mean, there's no business model that's working at the moment, and you've talked about this a lot as well, about kind of the fact that anybody who gets a half decent career at the BBC as a producer, and then they have one hit, and then they leave and they set up their little company in their kitchen, and they don't have any overheads, and then they'll get a commission or 2 commissions, and everybody's talking about them in broadcast magazine, and then a year later they've got no money. There's no, that's it. And
there's no budget. There's no.
That's not a sustainable business model either.
So, No. So in the meantime, and as it were, just staying in the game and just putting stuff out there and just showing what you can do, I think is really important, because there are systemic problems which you as an individual writer and I as an individual writer am simply not able to do anything about. And I think it's really depressing when you read and hear in Broadcast Magazine or reports from the Edinburgh TV Festival, all of the people with the power to do something about it sitting around saying, we don't, it's difficult, isn't it? We don't really know what to do about it. And if the people who can change it can't change it, well, I don't know. I mean, the reality is the moment somebody breaks the paradigm with a cheap comedy show that doesn't need to be an international seller, suddenly everyone goes, oh, we should do that. And, you know,
I think we have
1,000 comedy writers go, oh, really? That great idea. The thing that we've been saying for the last 15 years we should be doing.
Yeah. I think there is the potential, and I think, you know, you and I know the people potentially who are going to be the ones to do it, because we know lots of people who want to write comedy, and we've, you know, we're in touch with hundreds, thousands probably of people, and, you know, somewhere in that group, you know, somebody's going to come through, and the models are out there. There is YouTube is, and again, you mentioned Cal Newport. Cal Newport often says, you know, there will be somebody will set up a successful way of making stuff on YouTube. And YouTube feels to me like the place potentially that someone could do it, because you don't need to have a huge following on YouTube to start earning money from it. You can actually make money from YouTube, and that's that, I think.
And you're watching it on TV. So last night, at one point, there was a YouTube video that I was interested in watching, and I just sat on my sofa and watched it on TV whilst my kids were getting ready for bed, where I would normally have been watching a scripted comedy show. I was watching a YouTube video about something I was specifically interested in at the time. And I think that is really, really killing scripted, but at the moment, scripted comedy at least isn't quite punching through in a way that other genres maybe are.
Well, I was thinking, so what's our USP? Well, we're British, and, you know, Britain is the home of the written comedy. You know, Shakespeare, Dickens, Jane Austen, Douglas Adams, Helen Fielding. You know, we're writers. We are a nation of writers, and it's time we reclaimed our seat at that table of, you know, sort of. We make great comedy. We write great comedy. We are a country that has known more disappointment and failure than any other country in the world, and we know how to write about it. So, you know,
we've known great success and great failure.
Yeah,
we had an empire and then we lost it. Yeah, no, it's all there. Well, I'm convinced. I mean, when it comes down to it, you write the genre you want to write, and you're writing novels. Because you can't not, you have to do it, don't you? It's like, and if you didn't, and I was just saying before we started recording, you know, I do a weekly Substack called Cary's Almanac, where I'm writing about different festivals in the Christian calendar from a historic, biblical, ecclesiastical perspective, all that kind of stuff. And that's the thing I fantasize about. And so I think, well, I should monetize that more effectively, because that's the thing I really, really want to do. So,
and there's a good little point about that, because actually, you know, I read it every week. I really enjoy it. And, you know, what's a Jewish bloke, what interest does a
Jewish North Londoner,
North Londoner who is not that interested in religion, what is it? And it's, you know, it's a genuine curiosity. You know, they're good stories, and you're a very good writer, so, you know, I'll always enjoy what you write. But actually, you know, it's so obvious that you have such a kind of commitment to the stuff you're writing. You have such love for it. It just kind of flows. And I do think there is something in that. I mean, if you are thinking of writing a book, and, you know, or a novel or something, you know, that's the stuff that you love, you know, the things that really excite you, you know, that you're curious about, and not just, and this isn't just the write what you know cliche. I think it's actually, you know, really get into, if it's something that you do like, you know, really just find a way of talking about it that no one else has done. But you're already ahead of the pack, because you know a lot about it. So you know, find your voice. Again, the other cliche, but that's probably how you will find your voice, by just really kind of researching and and expressing the stuff that you love
Yeah.
and writing
Yeah,
about.
stuff that I'm interested in that I've been looking for an excuse to read up about a bit more anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And people find that interesting, but also remembering that most people spend most of their time not thinking about any of it. So just making sure I explain what, you know, explaining my terms as I go and not assuming any knowledge. I think there's some good advice in Scott Adams's book called Reframe Your Brain, which is, I think, quite a good sort of, it's kind of a productivity book, but it's a more of an approach to life sort of thing. And obviously he's the Dilbert guy, but also
Yeah,
people
yeah.
hate him because he's pro-Trump. But the thing that he wrote in his book that just stayed with me is go where the energy is. So if you find yourself writing about stuff and you just think, I just really want to write about this, note that, because you're passionate about it, and that will be obvious to the people reading it. Or if you have a service or a way in which you want to help people, it's very specific. And no one else is doing it this way. Why aren't they doing it this way? This is how I really think it needs to be done. Well, pay attention to that, because that could be a superpower. That could be
Yeah.
something super interesting.
I mean, just to say, with the book that I've written, this new book, Funny Up Your Fiction, how to add laughs to your novel. The only reason I wrote this book was because I started writing novels, and there's like a million books out there how to write a novel. I thought, oh yeah, this is all good, and let's see what's anyone written about writing funny novels. There's nothing. There's absolutely not. There's like a couple of blogs from 8 years ago,
Yeah.
Reader's Digest, and they just say all the stuff that's like, kind of write what you know and write in your voice and all the
Yeah.
stuff that you and I know is a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, I've got to find out for myself. And in the process of finding out, I've managed to kind of, it's sort of quite a long way down the line. I thought, is this a book? Maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it is. So that's how that came about.
Yeah. Well, if you want to go and find is it called Funnying Up Your Fiction?
Funny Up Your Fiction.
Funny Up Your Fiction is available on Amazon and other online stores, I'm sure. Is there print on demand as well?
There is. I'm just in the process of making it printing wide, but at the moment it's paperback. It's just on Amazon. The audio will be out in a few weeks, and then it'll be out. You can order it from your bookshop in a couple of weeks or so, I guess. So,
excellent. Yeah. And so, but also you have a newsletter which is well worth the price of admission. How would you get hold of that?
Yeah, just log into davecohen.org.uk and you get the newsletter, and you get, I've got a little thing that I've written called So You Want to Write Comedy, which is just a kind of very general introduction to how to become a comedy writer.
Excellent. Great. Well, there'll be links to that below somewhere attached to this conversation, show notes, whatever it is. But anyway, good to talk to you as always, Dave. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching The Situation Room, and we'll speak to you next time. Cheerio.